Hey, it's Dominic Ajakovic, and you're watching Light the Fuse Wrestling Podcast.
Hello everybody, I am your host, MTG, and I want to welcome you to Light the Fuse Wrestling Podcast, the only podcast where we light the fuse and bring the boom. And going off with today, we're going to start off with a little bit of the wrestling news. First off, QT Marshall, confirmed by DDP, is COVID-19 positive. We hope that y'all are wearing your mask and stopping this spread, or at least slowing it down, the spread of COVID-19 around the world. I understand everybody in the world right now has been affected by this in some way, shape, or form, and all we ask is that you wear your mask and please practice safe social distancing. And now, speaking of QT Marshall being positive with COVID-19, DDP seemingly speculates that he is positive. Another superstar that is currently COVID-19 positive would be Miro, aka Rusev, who was recently released by the WWE, went on his YouTube channel to report that yes, he is COVID-19 positive, showed that CJ, aka Lana's parents, did have COVID-19 or still currently have it. So we hope that everybody is practicing safe social distancing and wearing your mask to slow the spread of this horrible, horrible virus that has dwelt upon us. Another thing is that Brian Pillman Jr. faced Brian Cage on the latest episode of AEW Dark and just got slaughtered. This has nothing to do with what my review is going to be about, but I found that they should have done Flying Brian Jr. just a little bit better. But, I mean, it's how AEW is going to book it. I mean, he's basically debuted there, so give it time to build a character and we can see where that will end up. And now, with the July 15th edition of AEW Dynamite, AEW presented its Fight for the Fallen TV pay-per-view for free. It took place at Daily Places Amphitheater in Jacksonville, Florida, and it aired live on TNT, which last week's Fighter Fest did not air live. It was taped that next day as a 2-day event, but aired as a 2-week event. Now we're going to get on with the Hour 1. The Fight for the Fallen opening aired, and Jim Ross, Excalibur, and Taz were on commentary. Jim Ross did note that Tony Schiavone was awaiting his COVID-19 test, hence why he was not there at Daily Places Amphitheater. He did emphasize that Schiavone was perfectly fine, but the results were slow coming in. Then we would kick off with the first match of the evening would be Cody, not Cody Rhodes due to copyright, with his business associate Arn Anderson facing Sonny Kiss for the TNT Championship title. Sonny Kiss danced on the stage with 3 Jacksonville Jaguar cheerleaders before heading to the ring. Announcer Justin Roberts wore a tuxedo and delivered an in-ring introduction for the title match, giving it a real big fight feel. Cody then caught Kiss with a kick to start the match. Cody hit an early disaster kick for a near fall. Kiss then rolled to the ringside. Cody followed. Arn asked Cody if he wanted him to win the match. Then he told him to get his head out of his ass. Kiss then went on an offensive and shoved a cameraman right out of the way before Cody rolling back inside the ring. A short time later, Cody then set up his finisher, but Sonny Kiss countered and performed the Crossroads, which was unprecedented, and I found that was like a very offensive match just to even start off, which then led to a near fall. Kiss then went up top and performed a 450 splash for another near fall. Sonny Kiss then caught Cody's head in between his legs, but Cody shoved him off the top rope and onto the entrance platform that the level of the ring was on. Cody then followed to the ramp and performed an Alabama Slammer. Cody then rolled Sonny Kiss inside the ring, covered him, but Kiss then put his foot onto the bottom rope to break the count. Cody then powered up Sonny Kiss and performed his Din's Fire move for a near fall. Cody then showed frustration. Jim Ross said that he wasn't taking away from Kiss, but Cody's head just wasn't in the game because of his last 2 pinfall attempts were way off. Cody then spoke with Arn and was rolled up for a pin, but he kicked out and applied an STF. Kiss then reached to the ropes and broke it. Cody then removed the top turnbuckle. Sonny Kiss ended up sending Cody headfirst into this exposed turnbuckle and covered him for yet another near fall. Kiss and Cody squared off in the middle of the ring. Cody then ducked a punch and hit him with the Crossroads to score the pinfall. The match went for about 10 minutes and 45 seconds, with Cody coming out the victor to retain the TNT Championship. After the match, Cody and Kiss hugged in the middle of the ring, and then Cody raised the arms of Kiss and saluted him before huddling up with Anderson yet again. A well-worked match, Sonny stepped up and delivered one of the highest-performing matches to date. The story of Cohen being off of his game then helped him and Arn build a support from Ross on commentary is very interesting, and it didn't seem like it was done to explain why it took Cody so long as it did to beat Kiss, as much as it appears to be the story that will continue beyond this match. And then the second match on tap, we got Dax Hardwood and Cash Wheeler, now known as FTR, versus Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix, the Lucha Bros. Roberts then delivers an in-ring introduction again. The Butcher and the Blade were shown watching the match from the truck in which they stole from FTR a couple of weeks ago. Tully Blanchard was shown wearing a mask while watching in the spectator area. Both FTR members were down at ringside heading into a picture-to-picture break. Cash Wheeler then was isolated during the break, and when they got back to full screen, Phoenix then leapt off the top rope onto an uppercut from Wheeler, who then tagged out to Hardwood. Hardwood then picked up a near fall on Phoenix. Wheeler then tagged again and was worked over until he caught Phoenix doing a hurricanrana. Wheeler then walked Phoenix into his corner and then tagged Hardwood in, executed a top rope bulldog which led to a near fall. Hardwood then superplexed Pentagon Jr. Wheeler then leapt off the top rope, but Penta put his knees up. Phoenix then leapt from another corner at Hardwood, who also kept his knees up, and a short time later, Wheeler then performed a dive through the ropes and grabbed Penta by his head and drove him into the ground. Phoenix then leapt from the top rope onto Wheeler at ringside. In that ring, Hardwood then ducked Phoenix's kick. Hardwood ripped Phoenix's mask right off while covering his face. Hardwood then got him with a cradle pin for the victory. And see, in Mexico, I want to point out that Excalibur did note this out. In Mexico, if you unmask someone, it is an automatic disqualification, but not here in the States. It's a sign of disrespect, but still legal. After the match, the Butcher and the Blade jawed from aside the entrance of FTR. The Young Bucks, Matt Jackson and Nick Jackson, snuck up behind the Butcher and the Blade and then took him out with a super kick party. Matt then grabbed the key to the truck and brought it back and presented it to FTR. Kenny Omega walked out with the cooler in his hand and handed beers to both Wheeler and Hardwood. Omega, Wheeler, Hardwood toasted, and then Wheeler and Hardwood poured their beers over the head of Kenny. Young Bucks held back Kenny from going after FTR, who then left the ring and got in their truck and drove off. Wheeler tried to start a truck using the key, but appeared to have some trouble. But that's live TV for you, man. It was a fun match with a good TV finish that gave viewers a winner, yet didn't hurt Pentagon and Phoenix in any way. The post-match angle was solid at the end, with FTR pouring beers over Kenny's head. I just want to like Butcher and the Blade, but they look low budget whenever they show up wearing all their white outfits. The Inner Circle then joins the member of Chris Jericho, Santana, Ortiz, and Hager as they head to the ring. Sammy Guevara was still under suspension due to certain jokes and allegations from Sasha Banks. Then Jericho then took the mic and boasted that he had one of the best AEW matches when he beat Orange Cassidy. Jericho also boasted that he won the ratings battle, just as the 18 to 49 demographic. I want to say that's the right demo. And as he does every week, Jericho then preached about this 18 to 49 demographic being the most important aspect of the ratings. And he says he's never been beaten in that demographic and dubbed himself the Demo God. Funny. Jericho, who had a bottle of orange juice in his head, said Cassidy wants a rematch. He played to the spectator wrestlers and asked if why they wanted a rematch. He then pulled the rug out by saying he ain't getting one. He will never get one. Jericho said Cassidy did good, but not good enough. The then spectator wrestlers taunted Jericho with the chant that he's scared. Jericho toasted Cassidy with his orange juice. Jericho then took a swig and said, "This one's for Orange," and then poured it on the mat and said it was his dead career. Well, that's one way to do it, you know. Orange Cassidy then made his entrance from the audience. I'm using quotes for there. Jericho said Cassidy showed the world that he can go, but he doesn't have what it takes to be a world champion. Now, I've heard that by some people about Chris Jericho himself and another man known kind of like Daniel Bryan, who got himself over all by himself, which is kind of what Cassidy's doing with these lazy manifests. Cassidy, he did make his entrance, and he just wasn't enough to be world champion, according to Jericho. Jericho said Cassidy is lazy, a sloth, and has a bad attitude, so there will never be a rematch. Cassidy then got told by Jericho to take his sunglasses off, fold them up, and shove them straight up his Well, his hindquarters, where the sun don't shine, up his keister, the donkey, the ass. Jericho then told Cassidy to get the hell out of his arena, then called him a piece of donkey shit. Cassidy then held his lazy thumb up way above his head and gave him a thumbs up and turned it right back down. Kind of iconic as to when Batista gave Triple H the thumbs up and thumbs down. And as soon as he put his thumbs down, orange juice fell from above the ring onto the 4 members of the inner circle. Ortiz did his best Vince McMahon beer bath impression by literally swimming in this small pool of orange juice. Jericho called for a towel and wasn't happy when he realized that it was an Orange Cassidy branded towel. Ross said Jericho would join them on commentary, just before Jericho saying, "This is a $7,000 jacket," while covered in citrus. The Demo God bit was a comical way to follow from last week's Twitter drama over the television ratings, and I could have done without Ortiz doing this overly top WWE skit parody, but they did a nice job of pushing the idea of Jericho versus Cassidy rematch, which I do think we will be getting at All Out. We cut backstage with Alex Marvez interviewing Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy, and Marco Stunt. Stunt then laughs about Jericho being an idiot for having orange juice poured onto him. Luchasaurus then spoke about facing the Elite. The Elite. Jericho then joined the broadcast team, complaining that his $7,000 jacket was ruined. Slow motion replays of the orange juice dumping was shown while Jericho threw a fit on commentary. Jericho then vented, saying it's not over between him and Cassidy. Then he said that there will be a rematch. Jericho also complained about Stunt and called him a little runt. The hour 2, we have the entrances of the 6-man tag team match. We have the Elite of Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, and Nick Jackson versus the Jurassic Express, Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy, and Marco Stunt. Excalibur plugged the Being the Elite series as a graphic touted on the online series. Nick then went on an early facebuster on Jungle Boy, who blocked it with doing a handstand. Hangman Adam Page was shown backstage pouring a drink while the match played on a television next to him. Omega then worked in his t-shirt and was cocky when he and Stunt checked in. Jericho said that he knows him for 3 years, and that meant he was underestimating his opponent. Stunt got the better of Omega, who removed his shirt while Stunt tagged out. Jericho then recalled Luchasaurus, standing that he's 65 million years old. Jericho didn't believe that. He wanted to see a birth certificate, a very comedic manner at that. Meanwhile, Omega performed a flying hip toss right over the top rope onto Jurassic Express trio, heading into a slight commercial break. Jungle Boy then hit Omega with a nice clothesline at ringside, then returned to the ring with a springboard over the top rope into a DDT on the mat before tagging out. Luchasaurus then worked over Omega and the Bucks. Meanwhile, a shot that aired of the FTR duo joining Hangman at the bar, while Jericho wondered why were they all friendly. Well, it's because, Hangman's there to have a drink. Why not share? In the ring, Kenny Omega hits Luchasaurus with a pair of V-trigger knees, followed up with a Snapdragon suplex. Stunt and Jungle Boy then run in, and each took a Snapdragon from Omega. The Jurassic Express trio regrouped and worked over Omega, which led to a near fall that the Bucks broke up. Then the Young Bucks tagged Luchasaurus with a double super kick. The Bucks then teamed up with Omega for a triple powerbomb that led for a near fall. Stunt and Nick then fought on the ropes. Jungle Boy joined in, performed a Hurricanrana that put Nick in the ring, and Jungle Boy splashed onto him with a pin, but Matt broke it up. The Jurassic Park trio then ended up on the ramp area. This led to a triple team move, which resulted in Stunt performing just a beautiful Canadian Destroyer on Max Jackson, who was on the top rope. A short time after, Kenny Omega hit his opponents with another V-trigger knees. Omega then hoisted up Stunt for his finisher, but Stunt escaped and rolled up Omega for one of the best near falls I've seen in a while. Both men got their feet, and Omega blasted Stunt with a V-trigger and hit the one-winged angel for the win. This match went for a good 15 minutes. After the match, Kenny Omega started throwing punches on Stunt. Nick pulled him off and then spoke with Omega, who initially smirked. Nick then told Omega that that's not him. Omega got up and seemed to be apologetic, then sat down in the corner and smiled again. This big spot fest match was the match of the night, in my opinion, and it was a lot of fun for the style. There was a lot going on, and the guy continued to grab my attention with Jungle Boy with some of his cool spots. And the one thing I liked was that FTR and Page were joining forces and having a good old-fashioned drink. And in the post-match angle where Kenny Omega, I found as though we may be getting a heel turn by Kenny Omega. Backstage, Alex Marvez interviews AEW Women's Champion Hikaru Shida, who issues an open challenge to anyone who has the guts to take on the AEW Women's Champion. A Jon Moxley promo then aired from earlier today. Moxley stood outside and said the past few weeks have not been the best for him. He says he's been pissed off and bent out of shape about a great many things, but he would like to purge all his frustrations in this AEW Championship match against the Machine, Brian Cage. Moxley then said you can't take anything for granted in this world, and tonight we fight for the fallen, and quotes from Moxley. He then recalled Taz stating that he couldn't perform a paradigm shift on Cage because he's too big. Moxley said he might not even be able to use the move. Instead, he could just rip Brian Cage's surgically repaired bicep clean off the bone and quote-unquote enjoy the hospital. Moxley then closes his promo. The broadcast team spoke. Jericho said Dr. Britt Baker gave him a towel so that he could wipe his sticky fingers. The orange juice dump was shown again. And a very pissed off Jericho went on ranting and ranting and ranting again. The fourth match of the night, we got the Nightmare Sisters making their AEW Dynamite debut. We got Brandy Rhodes and Allie with Dustin Rhodes versus Kenzie Page and MJ Jenkins, a few developmental talents that we've seen on AEW Dark, and one making her AEW debut. Jericho noted that Brandy and Allie doesn't seem to like one another, and Allie ended up pinning Jenkins. This match went for exactly 2 minutes. After the match, Dustin then raised Brandy's hand and seemed reluctant to do the same with Allie, but eventually gave in. Brandy then tried to celebrate with Allie, who rolled her eyes. A potential channel-changing moment that had me overstaying its welcome. At the same time, it was a brief enough to only that we learned that Allie is a brat, and yet Brandy is trying to be the face in this moment, where she is a part of the Nightmare Collective. The broadcast team then hype up the announcement from Nyla Rose, and they set up a video of the brand new AEW Unrivaled action figures. This is something that I personally am excited for. I can't wait to look at them, see how good they are compared to the Jakks WWE or the Mattel ones, and if their line of toys is just as good, if not better, than what the WWE is producing. The broadcast team then ran through the card for next week, which will be featuring Cody defending the TNT title, but it doesn't say against who. We got Hangman Adam Page against one member of the Dark Order, number 5. Then we have, please do not deem me if I get this wrong, Evesely versus Demonte. I hope I got that right. I think I got all of that wrong, but these two are making their AEW debuts. Then we got MJF in action, the Young Bucks versus Butcher and the Blade in a Falls Count Anywhere match. And then we got the Inner Circle, ergo Le Champion Chris Jericho and Big Hurt Jake Hager versus Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, ergo the Jurassic Express. Brian Cage and Taz then make their entrance for the main event of this evening. Taz then delivers a promo in the ring. He says that Moxley chirped some propaganda bullshit, that Cage isn't 100%. Taz said that while Moxley was at home quarantining with his wife, Cage was wrestling. Taz then called out Moxley and told him to bring the AEW title. Moxley then made his entrance from the escalators and then his way into the audience. And I use audience with the most quotes. And we got our fifth and final match of the night. We have Jon Moxley defending his AEW World Championship against the FTW champion, the Machine, Brian Cage, with Taz at ringside. Moxley wore a Danny Havoc shirt to the ring, and Excalibur noted that Havoc's recent passing. Moxley then ducked a clothesline and punched Page to start the match, which led to the referee calling for the Bear to start the match. Cage then regrouped and curled Moxley to performing a fall-away slam during the opening minute. Moxley then removed his t-shirt and went to work on Cage's surgically repaired bicep. Cage then came out right back with punches and a nice side suplex. Cage then stood up on the apron and tried to suplex Moxley, who avoided it and wrenched the arm bad right over the top rope. Taz then checked on Cage. Moxley hit Cage with a suicide dive. Cage then regrouped and threw Moxley into a barricade. Cage then took Moxley into the area where the fans would normally be seated, but due to COVID-19, it's a little bit empty right there. Moxley then put Cage's arm in between a rung of a barricade and kicked it. This created a very good offense for Moxley. Moxley then grabbed a piece of the barricade and leaned it up against the ring. Excalibur noted that this match was continuing due to the referee's discretion, which I feel AEW slowly gives itself leeway on their rules, which I think is not a good thing, but it's also not a bad thing because, say it's a big fight feel, you don't want to end a championship match and leave him going home reckless, you know? But then Cage turned around and suplexed Moxley right onto the barricade. During the picture-in-picture break, the wrestlers returned to the ring where Moxley applied a sleeper that Cage then broke. Cage, with an offensive control coming out of the discretion, Cage then had Moxley in a torture rack and then dumped him onto the mat. Cage then put Moxley in a camel clutch briefly. Moxley and Cage then went back to the ringside area. Cage suplexed Moxley onto a chair that was set up on the floor. Cage then rolled Moxley back into the ring. Cage went for a moonsault, but Moxley avoided it. Moxley then caught Cage with a knee to the head. Cage clotheslined Moxley, who returned the favor. Cage then caught Moxley with a leaping knee to the chin. Moxley came right back with a paradigm shift for a 2 count. Now right there, that proved that Moxley was able to hit him with a paradigm shift. Now he said he was too big, but oh no. I found that to be just one of the best things I've ever seen. And then, let's see, Moxley immediately applied the armbar. Cage then got to his feet and powered up with an armbar, and then a buckle bombed Moxley. Cage then stood up on the middle rope and then superplexed Moxley to the back of the ring. Cage then set up for a drill claw finisher, but Moxley slipped out and rolled him into position for an armbar. Cage then tried to avoid the armbar, but Moxley powered him onto hold and then applied variations of the hold. Moxley smiled at Taz and told him, and I quote, "Screw you." Moxley continued to wrench on Cage's arm. Taz then literally threw in the towel. So Moxley didn't beat him 1, 2, 3. Moxley did defeat Brian Cage at the 15-minute mark exactly. Ross then said Taz made the right call by throwing in the towel and explaining the logic. Cage then got to his feet and blasted Moxley with the FTW title. Cage then started throwing punches at Moxley. The lights went out. Jericho was saying how, did we even pay the electric bill? The lights came back on. And who else but the returning Darby Allin was standing on the top rope. Darby Allin then leapt from the top rope and hit Cage with his skateboard right in the throat. Cage and Taz then left the ring and headed to the stage. Moxley then nodded approvingly while looking at Darby Allin. Meanwhile, Taz had to hold back Cage from returning to the ring. Jim Ross then explained again that Cage couldn't make any money if he was unable to work. Jericho then said that Cage is Moxley's meal ticket, and they continued to explain the logic behind Taz throwing in the towel. Ross then closed the show while Moxley and Darby Allin was fist bumping, and Jericho screamed that he was still covered in orange juice. And Jim Ross, just before we went off the air, 2 seconds, Jericho said, "I'm covered in orange juice, you suck." And that was one way to end AEW Dynamite. A good main event with a finish that was easy to see coming once Moxley applied his hold. I believe Taz has been bringing that orange towel out with him, but once Cage was in the hold and the cameras kept showing Taz holding the towel, we just knew what was going to happen. Even so, I think the basic idea of Moxley targeting Cage's injury, and I also like it that Taz was throwing in the towel rather than Cage submitting. It worked better for his character, and I feel as though this is not the end of Moxley versus Cage. Overall, this was a very strong episode of Dynamite. It looked good on paper and damn well delivered. And I have more to say about this episode. If I could, and I would, I just enjoyed every bit of it. If I have to rate the entire show, I would give it 4 out of 5 stars. Each match would have to be registered very differently. If I would, go right back to the start of the match. The TNT Championship, Sonny Kiss versus Cody. I would give that a 3.7 out of 5 stars. I have to give it that. I did enjoy it. The next one was FTR versus Lucha Bros. Such a very, very good match. I have to give this one a 3.5 out of 5 because most of these matches did deliver. The Elite, Kenny Omega and Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson versus Jurassic Express. That one was a hands down 3.5 as well. It delivered, but it was a spot fest. Then we had the Nightmare Sisters. This is a flat out 1.5 because it was just a 2-minute squash match just there to introduce the Nightmare Sisters to Dynamite. I didn't care for it at all. It was actually quite quote unquote the bathroom breaks that we were used to in WWE with these women. And I'm not saying nothing wrong with that. It's just I was not enthused by this match at all. Then the 5th and final match of the night was Jon Moxley and Brian Cage. This match was great. It had everything. I feel as though the ref should have kept his lean way and not allow these disqualification stipulations things to go in. But I also like how Taz did not ruin Brian Cage's character by also throwing in the towel. So overall, this one gets I'll give it a 3 out of 5 because it wasn't the best, but it also wasn't the worst match. And that's my review of AEW Dynamite. Again, you can follow me on Instagram at ThisIsMTG. You can follow me on Twitter at ThisIsMTG. Go on Facebook to LTF Wrestling, Light the Fuse Wrestling Podcast on Facebook. And let's not forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel of MTG Network. Go to youtube.com/ youtube.com/MTG Network. And remember, light the fuse, bring the boom. And we'll see y'all again right here